Today we are going to discuss challenge number 2 in implementing enterprise systems. Challenge number 2 is about complexity involved in data migration and data cleanup that is required to do implementation of enterprise systems. So let's look at case study number 2. This case study is around data migration and data cleanup. So this is from a oil and gas company in the US which had a subsidiary in Nigeria, and there was a corporate initiative to implement Ariba Contracts Workbench as a tool to manage contracts. The contracts until that point were being managed within the ERP system, and the company wanted this Ariba system to be the tool of choice for contracts management. So it was a corporate initiative, and there was a corporate team that was put together, that was going from business unit to the business unit, implementing this Ariba in different business units. So when they came to Nigeria, they already had implemented the same thing in other business units. So they were aware of all the challenges. So let's look at the contracts landscape in this business unit of this oil and gas company. We'll take a sample contract. Let's say this contract has a contract value of $2 million. That is the value that defines how many invoices can be paid against this contract. So for this sample contract, it would be 2 million worth of invoices. Now, each contract in this business unit had 2 subcontracts, and each of the subcontracts will have a certain value. Let's say in this case, the contract value was equally split between the US dollar and the local currency, which is called Naira, and the Naira equivalent of $1 million. So $1 million in USD subcontract, and $1 million equivalent of Naira in the other subcontract. Now when the invoices come in, they will be paid against each of these subcontracts, and the remaining value on these contracts will diminish over time. And this remaining value of the contract was the number that needed to be migrated from ERP system to Ariba. We were not migrating the full $2 million, but we were only migrating the remaining contract value to Ariba Contracts Workbench. And the reason is that we wanted only this remaining value to be spent on these contracts. The fact that each contract was split into 2 different currencies, one for US dollar and one for local currency, that added additional complexity, which was unique to this business unit. So let's look at some of the challenges we faced in this project with respect to the data. As I said, the remaining value of the contract in the ERP system had to be transferred over to Ariba, and that was the case in most other business units. That is how it was done. So that was anticipated by the IT implementation team. But one unique thing that was introduced in this project, the management team wanted all the contracts first need to be reviewed. The contract value in the system had to be matched up with the contract value on paper, and that was very unique to Nigeria. It was not done in other business units, and that should have been not a big wrench in the process. But Nigeria was a large business unit with $2 billion worth of contracts, active contracts, and more than 1,000 active contracts in place. So it became a large scale activity, and it was mostly left, not that they brought in a lot of consultants. It was largely left to the contracts team to do the contracts review alongside doing their full-time work, and they were given a target of completing this activity in 2 months, which was nearly impossible, if you ask me. So let's look at how did we overcome this big challenge of data cleanup that was thrown at us by the management almost at the last minute, if not the 11th hour. So when I arrived in Nigeria, the contracts team had already started working on reviewing the contracts in this system versus the what was on the paper. And what I noticed that they were doing it was very manual recording of their findings. The part of the process was manual. Reviewing the paper contract was a manual process, and we couldn't do anything about that manual process. But as far as the recording of any discrepancies was concerned, they were doing it on sticky notes put on the paper contracts. And when I arrived on the team, on the scene, I changed that process and started using Excel and automated few other things to help improve the productivity. And also, we were doing it in a very ad hoc fashion. The project, which was given for only 2 months to complete, could have easily taken a year the way they were doing it. So I introduced project management practices and managed the project as a mini project from there on. So it helped a little bit, I would say. We managed to finish the project with painstaking effort in 6 months time. And from there on, after the cleanup was done, the migration piece wasn't that painful. It happened quickly, and we were able to successfully implement the system. The key takeaways from this case study are the following. So don't think of data cleanup as an afterthought. Even though data cleanup is not the most glamorous piece, and it is never thought of one of the first few things in the implementation of an enterprise system, but it is really, really essential to think of data, how the data would be cleaned up and how would it be migrated and transformed from the existing system into the new enterprise system that you're implementing. And consider all the business drivers that impact data, and that is essential to understand how much importance you have to give to data and what pieces of data are more important than the other. In this case study, the management decided to clean up the data, to review the data, the contracts value in the system versus the paper. And the reason behind that was that the company had a partnership with the local government in Nigeria, and every contract was approved by the local government, and all the invoices that are paid against this contract are reimbursed by the government only if they are against a contract that has already been approved by the government first. If there were invoices which would come outside of the approved contracts, they would be the sole cost of the company, and they would not get reimbursed. So that was where it was. That's why there was a regulatory reason for the contract's value that made the contract values a critical piece of data. So when I went there with a technology background only, and I didn't have much experience in the company at that time, didn't have much experience in the business unit at all, and didn't understand the importance of the contract value at that time, I did question management's decision. But after learning all the pieces of information, I definitely agreed with the management's decision. So the key thing is consider all the business drivers that could impact the data. Another question to consider when thinking of data implementation is, when do you do the data cleanup, right? If I take the analogy of moving houses, do you clean up in anticipation of moving? Do you clean up on the day of moving while you're packing and your packers are there? Or you do after you have moved to the new place and then you do cleanup, or a combination of any of those three things, right? And there is no correct answer. Again, it really depends how important the piece of data that the pieces of data that you're moving, what is their criticality, what are the business drivers behind that data. You got to understand those to to say how much importance, how much time, how much effort I'm going to devote to data cleanup and data migration, and that is the key. Everything is driven by the business drivers. This kind of a diligence only if you are planning well in advance. If you are already late in the game, you arrive on the scene to implement, it is too late to consider all those parameters. And finally, who is going to be responsible for data cleanup? In most organizations, I have noticed that it is usually left to the business team to do the cleanup. The IT team may help in migration, but the cleanup is mostly left to the business team. And the reason is basically because the business team knows the data, what it is about, and where the gaps are, right? So they are the right people to clean up, and I agree. But having said that, the business team is not is a tech savvy team in most cases, and they do need some kind of tools and support in order to do data cleanup more efficiently. So some support from IT team, implementation team to the business team in doing data cleanup can go a long way. So that is it for today. You have been a lovely audience. Thank you for listening.